This is the story of the Scallop Christmas. And right here on the first page is a message from the author. Her name is Jane Freeberg, and she wrote, "Merry Christmas." The Scallop Christmas, written by Jane Freeberg, pictures by Astrid Shekels. On Christmas Eve, as a light December snow drifted gently to the ground outside, my grandchildren and I decorated our Christmas tree. As always, I hung 2 painted scallop shells in a place of honor near the top. The shells were old, chipped, and dull, and to some they may have looked out of place hanging among the brightly colored glass ornaments that sparkled red and gold and blue. But to me, they were the most beautiful. My mother painted them years and years ago, and each Christmas they bring back precious memories, memories of perhaps the happiest day of my life. It all began one fall when I was 10. My papa's friend, John Howard, a local fisherman, stopped by our house to tell Papa that the scallops in our bay were ready to harvest. There was an enormous number of them, and we didn't know where they came from because we'd never seen them in our bay before. But oh my, they were very, very welcome. In those days, times were hard and money was scarce. Most people in our village had barely enough to get by and needed every extra dollar they could earn. We knew that when the scallops were ready to harvest, fish merchants would come to our small village and pay cash for them and then sell them to the big city restaurants and other buyers. Most of the men in our little New England fishing village were lobstermen or fishermen or farmers, but Papa was the teacher at the one-room schoolhouse. After Mr. Howard gave us the news about the scallops, he asked Papa for a favor. "Lucas," he said, "we'd all be much obliged if you would close down the school for a few days so we could take all the young'uns out scalloping. The prices are awfully good and folks around here really need the money." According to local rules, each fisherman could sell just 1 bushel of scallops each day for each person in his boat. So it made good Yankee sense to take everyone possible, from grandma to the babies. Papa was the most popular man in town when he agreed to close school for an entire week so everyone could go scalloping. My papa wasn't like most dads in town. Big, strong, weathered by the sun. No, Papa was tall and skinny. He loved his vegetable garden even more than he loved his ramshackle old boat, the Pineapple. Once in a while, when he was gardening, his tricky shoulder would act up and slip out of joint, causing him great pain and requiring an emergency trip to the doctor. When money was tight, Papa sometimes paid the doctor with vegetables from the garden. Although we didn't have much money, we were happy. Still, every summer, I looked longingly at the kids from away, riding their beautiful, shiny bicycles. The summer kids just always seemed to have everything they wanted. I would close my eyes and imagine myself perched on the seat, handlebar streamers flying in the breeze, I knew better than to ask for a bike, but despite my best efforts, I am not sure how well I hid my desire. Still, there were so many things to do. We had balls and jump ropes and games for rainy days. We built secret clubhouses in the woods and played hide and seek and kick the can. In the summer, we went to the beach every day. In the winter, we skated and sledded and went to school. On the first morning of Scallop Week, I lay awake in bed, wriggling my toes in anticipation of a great adventure. I thought it would be fun to spend the day out on the bay instead of in school taking our usual Monday morning spelling test. The rest of my family was not as excited. My older sister Jen didn't much care for the boat, and my little brother Charlie just wanted to stay home and play. Nevertheless, we all hurried downstairs for a hearty oatmeal breakfast at Mama's urging, before racing off to the dock where Papa kept the pineapple. He loaded 5 bushel baskets aboard, 1 for each passenger, as well as lunch, sweaters, life preservers, and a rake for scalloping. The rake handle was almost twice as long as Papa. It had to be long so he could reach deep into the water and scoop the scallops from the bottom. Some of the more experienced fishermen used other ways to catch scallops, some faster, but raking was the only way Papa knew. School teachers did not have much fishing equipment. We climbed aboard and settled down for the short ride onto the bay, hollering to our friends who were already at work. The harbor was full of all kinds of boats, including a few sleek sailboats and fancy cabin cruisers owned by people from away who hadn't left yet for the season. Next to them was the townsfolk's lobster boats, small fishing boats, and dinghies of every color imaginable. Everyone was taking advantage of the scallop bounty. Some of the regular fishermen wore bright yellow oilskin pants and shiny black boots to keep as dry as possible. It was a perfect fall day, bright and crisp as a new apple. The sky so blue it almost hurt to look at it. When we reached a spot far enough away from the other boats, Papa stopped the engine and let the boat drift. We settled down as comfortably as we could, and Papa started to work. The water was deep, and I could see it was hard work for Papa to scratch the bottom and then raise the heavy rake loaded with scallops, rocks, and other debris to the surface over and over again. Each time, the debris and junk had to be cleaned up and tossed overboard, while the scallops were rinsed and put into the basket. I was fascinated by the beautiful scallop shells that slowly filled our baskets. Everyone seemed different, with lovely patterns of red and blue, black and purple. Papa told us scallops are the only mollusk that can move, and that inside their lovely shells, they have many blue eyes. Scallops were my favorite, much more interesting than clams or mussels. By lunchtime, as we ate our thick cheese sandwiches, I had grown tired of just sitting still to stay out of the way. I thought surely we would return to shore soon. I could see Papa was very tired, and Mama rubbed his neck to help relax his aching muscles. But when the picnic things were packed away, Papa started raking again. To pass the time, Jen suggested we play 20 questions and I Spy, and then every other game we could think of. After that, we sang every song we could remember. Still, Papa raked on and on. At long last, as a fiery fall sun was setting over the coastline, and only after all 5 baskets were full of scallops, we headed for shore. Most of the other boats had already filled their baskets and gone home. At the dock, we found Mr. Black waiting for us with his old red truck. He bought everyone's catch right on the spot and paid the fishermen cash. After Papa sold his scallops, he gave Jen, Charlie, and me each a shiny quarter. He called it patience money. It's a reward for a long, hard day of sitting still, he said. On the short ride home, we spent the money many times over in our imaginations. A trip to Barney's store for red hots or licorice shoelaces, or perhaps root beer barrels and bubble gum. When I asked Papa what it was he was going to do with his patience money, he just said to me, "Marcy, it's for something special." That night in bed, despite my new quarter, I grew unhappy thinking about the next day. Another long, boring day of doing nothing and just staying out of the way. I wanted to skip it all together, but in the morning, Papa would hear of no such thing. 5 people means 5 bushels, he said in a voice that meant better not argue. Once again, Papa did not quit until he had filled all 5 baskets, long after the rest of us would happily have quit and gone home. That evening, Papa showed Mama an angry bruise on his shoulder caused by the constant rubbing of the rake handle. Mama fashioned a thick pad to fit under his suspenders to protect the sore spot. Wednesday morning dawned cool and cloudy with a brisk fall wind coming in from the sea. I knew it would be very unpleasant on the bay. The boat would rock all day long in the waves and wind, and I even thought wistfully about school. Mama packed hot soup to keep us warm, but everyone was pretty cold by the time Papa finished. He was so cold and tired that his lips had turned gray and he could barely lift his arm. After 3 days of scalloping, I had 3 shiny quarters, the most money I'd ever had in my life, with a promise of 3 more to come. But I wondered why Papa needed the money so badly. Why did he continue to work so hard even though he was hurting so much? Both Thursday and Friday mornings dawned even cloudier and colder. Mama packed old blankets in with the supplies to help keep us warm, as well as some fudge, hoping to sweeten everyone's temper as another day dragged on, and we grew tired of sitting. I brought along some storybooks to read aloud to Charlie. Papa was pleased that I'd thought of Charlie's happiness, because he knew it was really hard for Charlie to sit still. Mama sometimes called Charlie Little Itch. Saturday, the 6th day, was the last one for scalloping, and the pleasant sunny morning promised a much warmer day ahead. Still, I considered pleading with Papa to let me stay home. I thought of how much fun I could have ashore on such a brilliant autumn day. I already had 5 quarters I never expected to have, and that seemed like quite enough. I wish I knew why Papa needed his patience money, I said to Jen. It must be for something really important. I decided to try to be patient for 1 more day. Again, Papa raked endlessly, looking more tired than I had ever seen him. Suddenly, he slipped on the wet deck. He threw his arms out wildly in an attempt to regain his balance and to break his fall. But as he reached out, his tricky shoulder acted up and dislocated. He lay on the wet deck of the boat, grabbing his shoulder, his face white with pain. I was scared to see my Papa, who could handle any problem, suddenly so helpless. "Marcy," said Papa, "you'll have to take her into the dock." I was Papa's summertime fishing buddy, and I loved it when he let me steer the pineapple, but I had never, not once, done it without Papa standing right behind my shoulder. Okay, Papa, I'll try, I replied, though I had a lump of fear in my throat. I was too small to reach the controls, so I pulled an old wooden milk box into position. When I stood on it, I could reach the controls and see through the windshield. Luckily, the boat was adrift, so I didn't need to pull up the anchor. I turned the key and the motor roared. I knew not to push the throttle in too far. I meant to take it slow and easy. Now, to find the channel, I thought. Given the tide, the water was only deep enough in the channel to float our boat. At low tide, the channel was easy to see as it meandered through the exposed mudflats. And at high tide, there was enough water for the pineapple to safely go anywhere in the bay. But today, I faced a mid-tide, and it was going out. The bay was dangerous because you couldn't easily distinguish between the channel and the shallow waters. If I didn't steer correctly, the boat would get stuck until the tide turned and came back in. That could take hours and would mean Papa would have a long, painful wait before he could get to the doctor. 2 types of buoys marked the channel. Red ones, called nuns, and green ones, called cans. The channel ran between them. I soon spotted a red nun, and I remembered Papa's motto, "Red right returning." I carefully steered the boat so that the nun was on my right. I'd never been so happy to see anything in my life as that red nun. I began to search for a green can so I could stay in the channel. Lots of boats were heading toward the dock, their day's work already done. Most fishermen slow down when they pass slower or smaller boats, knowing the wake they make as they plow through the water can be dangerous. Our boat wasn't so small, but on this day, it surely was the slowest. Suddenly, a large boat roared past at full steam, its large wake rocking the pineapple and knocking us about. The milk box I was standing on tipped back and forth, and I staggered to stay upright. I heard Papa groan as he tried to hold on with one hand, and his shoulder slammed against the deck. I blinked back tears and fought to keep my balance. As we moved closer to the dock, I could see that most boats were already on their moorings. The harbor looked awfully crowded. I felt like I was trying to thread a needle with a rope. As carefully as I could, and even more slowly, I steered between the other craft until, at last, we hit the dock with a mighty thump. I could barely unclench my hands from the wheel. I'd been holding on so tightly, my knuckles were white. While Mama hurried Papa off to the doctor, Jen and I secured the pineapple. Together we lugged one of the heavy baskets up the ramp to where Mr. Black was waiting. When we told him about Papa's shoulder, he helped us carry the rest, and then he paid us, just as if we had raked the scallops ourselves. As we stood on the dock waiting for Mama, holding Papa's money, I was glad I hadn't begged to stay home. I had been in just the right place at the right time. When I got home and gave Papa his money, he smiled at me wearily and said, "Thank you, Marcy. You did a good job. I'm proud of you." I had never felt so grown up. We were back in school on Monday, and life returned to normal. As the days passed, and with our patience money long since spent, Jen and I still wondered what Papa would do with his. Maybe he would buy Mama a new Sunday coat, since her old one was pretty shiny in the seat, or maybe some new winter boots, which he certainly needed. Maybe he had already used it to pay bills. Fall finally gave way to winter, and a few days before Christmas, we hiked out into the woods to find the very best fir tree in the whole forest. On Christmas morning, we would see the tree dressed in all its glory for the first time. We loved Christmas. Every house in town placed white candles in the windows. We went caroling, and we couldn't wait to perform in the Sunday school pageant. We didn't expect to find many gifts under our tree, though. Usually we found a few small toys in our stockings, along with an orange and some candy canes, and some new socks and underwear. Oh, how I loved the smooth feeling of socks with no darns in the heels, and the feeling of tight new elastic in my underpants. After a whole year of washing, sometimes that old elastic seemed a little risky. Christmas morning dawned at last. Jen and I clattered down the stairs until we could see into the parlor. Papa stood there with his coffee cup, smiling at us. I could see Charlie staring with his mouth agape, murmuring quietly, "Oh, oh, oh, oh." We hurried into the parlor to see why he was so excited. There, next to our tree, stood 3 beautiful, shiny bicycles, a red one, a blue one, and a green one with training wheels. I couldn't speak. And then I looked at the Christmas tree. This one was indeed the finest ever, for in addition to the lights and the tinsel and all our family favorite ornaments, Mama had painted dozens of beautiful scallop shells, gold and silver. And as the tree gleamed in the early morning sunlight, I understood why Papa had worked so long and so hard scalloping, and why he had needed his patience money, not for himself, but for us. Each year, when I hang those battered shells on my tree, I remember it all. Yes, the bicycle I wanted so badly has long since rusted away, but it turns out the bike wasn't the most important part of our Scallop Christmas. No, the best gift of all was realizing just how much my Papa loved me, and that is what I will never forget. I hope you enjoyed the story as much as I enjoyed reading it to you. This is a picture of Jane Freeberg, my mother-in-law. And Pastor Mandy is my sister-in-law. My name is Lauren, and I hope you have a very Merry Christmas.